Alright, welcome to Chapter 19's video lecture on hazardous waste. Hazardous waste is a discarded solid or liquid material that contain one or more of the 39 toxic, carcinogenic, mutagenic, teratogenic compounds at levels that exceed established limits. An easy indicator of what these are, they usually catch on fire fairly easily. They're reactive or unstable and capable of corroding materials. Issues involved in setting regulations of hazardous waste. Well, first of all, you have to identify what the hazardous waste and toxic materials are. So this list is often limited to current offenders and substances already linked to adverse effects. So we're making new chemicals all the time, and we're not updating this list based on that. Setting limits of exposure is nearly all substances are toxic in sufficient quantities, so you have to look at that. So you have to do LC50 testing, which is, remember, when you have a population where 50% of the population dies, what concentration is that? Lethal concentration. So this takes time and it has to be done in a controlled setting. So this is often why this doesn't happen. So there are issues involved in setting regulation. There are two different types of toxicity, acute versus chronic. Effects on massive doses is acute, and small doses over time are chronic. Chronic is much harder to detect as its effects may not surface until many years later. Synergism is assessing effects of chemical mixtures. So, say a person's smoking and also works in an asbestos plant. So this is really, really hard to figure out which one is causing more harm. And most toxicity studies done on a single compound, so we don't combine things. Health effects associated with hazardous waste. Each year, roughly 1,000 new chemicals are produced and distributed, so 70,000 are already in daily use. The main problem is the chemical product and byproducts of industry are often handled and disposed improperly, leading to various issues. Resource Conservation and Recovery Act. In 1976, the U.S. Congress passed the RCRA. The law requires the EPA identify hazardous waste and set standards for management by state. It also requires that firms that store, treat, or dispose of more than 220 pounds of hazardous waste per month have to have a permit. Permit holders use cradle-to-grave systems, so remember they know that how the chemical was formed and they know all the way to the end of it to keep track of waste transferred from point to origin to approve off-site disposal. And please note that hazardous waste laws do not regulate 95% of the country's hazardous waste. It's really scary. The official definition of hazardous waste mandated by Congress does not include radioactive waste. It doesn't include hazardous and toxic household waste. It doesn't include mining waste, oil and gas drilling waste, cement kiln dust, waste from small businesses and factories that generate less than 220 pounds per month. So here are two video clips for the Love Canal. I recommend going and watching them. In 1953, Hooker Chemicals filled the canal, covered it with clay and topsoil, and sold it to Niagara Falls School District for $1. In 1977, chemicals began leaking. In 1978, publicly there was press around the illness that caused President Carter to declare Love Canal a federal disaster. And from this, we learned three lessons. We learned that we can never really throw anything away. Waste do not often stay put. And preventing pollution is safer and cheaper than trying to clean it up. So Superfunds, we talked about with these where we looked a few of them up. They're Comprehensive Environmental Cleanup, Environmental Response Compensation and Liberty Act. So CERCLA, and yes, you need to know that. Identifies hazardous waste dump sites and underground tank leaking. It cleans up groundwater near sites. It cleans up sites. It's a national priority list. And when found, requires the responsible party to pay for the cleanup. Superfund Amendment and Reauthorization Act was done in 1986, so SARA. Defense from being associated with cleanup and do environmental audit before buying the property are two additional things to add to that. International trade of hazardous waste. A concern of industrialized countries is exporting waste to poorer developing countries lacking administration and technical resources to safely dispose of the waste. So the Basel Convention in 1989 controls the movement of hazardous waste from one country to another. This is the CBS video that we watched about electronic waste. If you want to rewatch it again, there it is. So you spent some time in class researching the 10 most hazardous Superfund materials, and here they are. Remember, you have to know cadmium. Now, you need to know, it says 5 here, but you have to know all 10. What is it? What's it used for? How's it introduced in the environment? And make sure to detail an acute effect on humans that result in the exposure to the material. And that's the end. Thank you.